Thank you. I'm often asked how I got into classical music and decided to formally learn and play the Sarangi. As a teenager, I liked, or should I say, loved classic rock, and Led Zeppelin was my favorite band. Uh, in 1990, I started playing the guitar with friends at school, and then one thing led to another, and in 1996, I ended up with the Sarangi. As for an answer to how one becomes what one is, it is a difficult question to answer because I believe we are not as free to choose as we like to think. And the philosophical debate on free will is still open. But a relevant question here would be that whether is this something worth pursuing at all? Is the pursuit of beauty an end in itself? Is the pursuit of music as a form of beauty an end in itself? And I will say yes. Again, this is an aesthetic answer, not a scientific judgment. Okay, and then this leads me to the next question, which is, what is the most beautiful kind of music, or what is the best kind of music? And actually, I don't know, perhaps because there is no answer to this question. But what I do know is that our classical music is a great human invention. This music can be tender, joyful, sad, intense, somber, meditative, intellectual, virtuosic. You can choose your adjective. And it can also be a way of life, if you ask me. Our classical music has been influenced by cultural influences that arrived in the subcontinent, but most of all, it has been influenced by folk music of all the regions within the subcontinent. Folk songs, as you must have heard many, they have these timeless melodies. And what classical music did over time was to distill these melodic ideas within folk songs and made them a part of their system, which is based on rags. So basically, the rags of classical music are found have evolved from folk music. Now, what is a rag? A rag is a set of melodic ideas that go well together. And they provide a tonal space where music can be improvised and played. And for example, what you heard right now was Rag Basant Mukhari. And it has a certain set of notes which is played in a peculiar way and in a certain combination of phrases and so on. So this is what a rag actually sounds like. Okay, this is a very sophisticated system of music, and it can be the musical ideas in it can be analyzed and then used for improvisation, which is thoughtful and also emotive. One could also argue that it is a musician's music, but I will say that it is also anyone's music, anyone who cares to listen and is led to wonder. Okay, now I will tell you a little about the Sarangi as an instrument and how it came to be. In its present form, the Sarangi basically came into this shape in the mid-19th century. And it evolved from folk Sarangis, and there are many folk Sarangis. Almost every region has one in the subcontinent. For example, a Nepali Sarangi, a Jogia Sarangi, Rajasthani Sarangi. There is Sarinda in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There is Soroz in Balochistan, to name a few. But this classical Sarangi has about 38 to 40 strings. It's not a fixed number, but it's far more many strings than any folk Sarangi. And out of these 38 to 40 strings, there are 3 melody strings that I was playing. These 3 melody strings are made up of gut or catgut, and the rest of the strings are made of steel and copper, and the rest of them are actually meant to be tuned to the scale that we are playing, for example, and they resonate in the background to make the sound of the instrument more rich. Now, all these strings pass through a bridge, and this bridge rests on goatskin parchment, this one, and this skin also resonates when music is played, further enhancing the sound of the instrument. Okay, classical Sarangi is primarily meant to play classical music, and its voice is considered to be the closest to the human singing voice and style in our classical music. And its technique is also kind of vocal, the way vocals are sung. And a typical performance is, you just heard the first part of a typical performance, which is alap. where there is no beat going on. And then it moves on to a beat on the tabla at a very slow tempo, and which is followed by a beat at a faster tempo, and then it becomes faster and faster and reaches a climax, and then the performance ends, as you must have heard. And there are many tals, which are beat cycles basically. Teen tal is the most popular one, which is a 16-beat cycle. And there are many other tals as well. It can be 12-beat cycle, 10, and so on. And there are many rags. So an artist has a lot of variety available to them. Whatever they want to do, like they can choose a rag, they can choose a tal, they can choose the tempos at which they want to play or sing the rag. So there is a lot of room for expressing themselves and for originality as well, I would say. Okay, the sarangi is basically the primary board instrument of the subcontinent, just like the violin in Europe and America. But still, most people in the younger generations haven't even heard of it, which is a sad thing to realize. The reason for it is that loss of patronage of any sort for classical music in general, and also it is a very difficult instrument to play and maintain. Now there are only a couple of luthiers who can repair a sarangi in Pakistan. And also there are about 4 sarangi players in Pakistan who play in professional settings, only 4. Okay, aside from the reason of passion which draws me to this instrument, I also wonder why pursuing something this is worthwhile. And to cite an instance from philosophy, the German philosopher, 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant believed that we must treat each individual as an end in themselves and put their priorities first, and then and not think of them as instrumental to our needs and how we can make use of them or how they can be useful to us. I would say that we should treat art also as an end in itself. And actually, just like we have moral values, we also have aesthetic values, even if we are not aware of them, like the colors we like, the landscapes we appreciate, and so on. Aesthetics are everywhere. In art, putting art as an end in itself, by that I mean that instead of expecting from musicians generally to just play this kind of music that we are familiar with, for example, the songs and tunes that we know, we should let them express their own medium, for example, if they're classical musicians. And we should be open to hearing something that is different, that is strange, unusual, maybe even a bit difficult to understand, because it will broaden our listening experience. Now, a couple of things I've learned about classical music in my musical journey. I would say that in one lifetime, it is impossible to come up with ideas that are both original and good individually, while bypassing the work and wisdom of centuries or 1,000 years. And that is why the master-disciple relationship is so important in our classical music. Because basically it requires a lot of discipline to assimilate and consolidate the teachings of the art, but it makes one a better and a more empowered musician, not a less original one. Okay, pursuing the instrument and music also allows us to shape a rich and authentic cultural identity, which can speak of the climate and the environments from which it originates, as it were. And also it is a landscape which is rich enough for an artist to express their own originality, whatever they want to do. So there is a lot of scope. It roots you into your origins, and also then it allows you to be original in its own way. It is not surprising that words cannot capture the beauty and the impressions that music creates, impressions of emotions like longing and desire and so on. After all, music is the most abstract of all arts. Earlier I mentioned improvising meaningfully, and I also wonder, or what one could ask, that is there something that music actually means? I will answer this question with a non-explanation by Ghalib, the famous Urdu poet. In one place, he speaks about being a spectator at the marvel of longing. So basically, he considers longing or desire as a thing of wonder, and he's just watching it. And he writes, "Hu main bhi tamashaiye nerang tamanna, hu main bhi tamashaiye nerang tamanna, matlab nahi kuch isse ke matlab hi bar aave," which means that even I am a spectator of the marvel of longing. and I don't intend to get any outcome or meaning from doing so. As if being a spectator of the marvel of longing is itself enough. And as I like to think, given the limits of human understanding, cherishing our sense of wonder at the world around us is meaningful enough. Cherishing our sense of wonder at the world of beauty, longing, and music, and much else besides is meaningful enough. Thank you.